Got everything on this side all plugged in. Even managed to reach the knock sensor way down there without even having to lift the car. So we got the grounds on the back, so time to head over to the other side. Don't think there's too terribly much going on over here. We'll see. We'll see. I'm just praying that there's not another ground that needs to be done on the other side. Alright, come on, baby. It's been a good day, so I've been banging away at the car, and I haven't got much of it on video, so I think I'll just run over an overview and try to remember everything that I did. So from the bottom, looking at the car, so we got the hose taken care of there as far as like what we need. I know I got written on the board what to go buy. I was able to use the old water hose, and I think that's going to work. It's not actually touching the suspension, the parts that move, and I think I could use, so I actually thought that the hose would fit the bigger fitting, the one over here, and it actually doesn't really fit it very well. You can force it on there, and I'm pretty sure that's 1/2 inch. Or maybe even 3/4, and it's probably 1/2 inch, and I probably need 3/4 on that front piece. But what I'm going to do is just replace that whole hose and run it in front and bring it onto here. So that should work out well. So that's done. What else did we do underneath here? So we got all this stuff was buttoned up. The wiring, we got the knock sensor going on there, and the crank position sensor is behind that. And I was able to run that back behind the cylinder head and tighten that all up. And then we got of course, we got the transmission lines done that I had that all on film, and they go up to the front to the radiator, so that is good. And let's see, I couldn't get the plate to fit underneath the transmission. That's fine. I put a new, so the car originally was equipped with it's not power steering. Yes, it has power steering with cruise control, and it had this throttle cable going up to some weird box that was some kind of electronic doodad from the 70s, and then another cable coming out of that box, and the box was like actually like almost like on the front bumper. It was really far up on the frame rail. So I bought a stock replacement for the base model cable. And I got rid of the 2 cables. You can see them down there on the ground. Just massive amounts of cable. And ran this guy. And it takes quite the different route than the stock one does, which kind of had me a bit confused. But what I did is after trying to put it, into the transmission first and then running it to the inside, I said, well, this is the easy part, obviously, because I'm not upside down and getting a cramp all over my body. So I will throw it on the back of the speedometer and then run it to the transmission, and that worked out. We had just enough cable to make that so the speedometer will work in this thing. That's good. And is there more and no more and no more and. Okay, so that's it from the bottom. I'll drop it down and we'll take a look at the top. On the top side, again, you know, we got those lines in there for the transcooler, and we got the heater line here ran to the pump. There's one here that I have to do a return on the front there, so it's pretty easy to access this guy on the top. And I cut off some hose. I know I need 4 foot of hose, so I'll just run that to O'Reilly's when I go to get the bottom radiator hose. That's too easy, and we'll have that go to the front, so it'll kind of run with this guy here, this fuel line. And we plugged in all the wiring harness, so you guys I'll probably throw some video of me struggling to get all this done. This harness didn't want to reach over to this side very well. I'm not really sure what was up with that, but we made it work. And on this side, it is all plugged in as well. So the engine is actually all plugged in. And we put the spark plugs in both sides and we torque them down. So I think that I have managed to put off the wiring pretty much as long as I possibly could. So I think the only fabrication piece I have left, other than a couple of boxes for the breather box, and I need to make a little, well, two breather boxes. I need to make a little breather box for the fuel tank vent, and I need to make one for the valve covers to go to. And other than that, I think I might have to get to the point where I pull out a test light and start chasing wires from the chassis and try to figure out how to actually hook this thing up, because I think we're getting there. We're pretty close. Alright, so this is the one that I cut, and come to find out, it really wasn't that this was expanded. That's how the hose is actually made, although it's still too wide right here. So what we're going to do is just clip that thing off, and it should fit. And that's the number. It's a Gates hose. In case anybody's wondering, it's a pretty good fit for these Nova. It's the Nova, aka Pontiac Phoenix, aka the Disco Nova, is the X body. It is called an X body, which I've heard is the same thing as the F body from like whatever it was, like 70 something to 80 or whenever they quit making that horrible disco Camaro. so apparently it's the same chassis pretty much exactly, and it looks the same. We'll see. But anyway, we'll get that cut, thrown on. I'm gonna throw a little gray goop up underneath that radiator hose guy up, y'all, and it's dripping, and get it taken care of. We hit it with some of this. It's like ultra gray Motosil. I like this stuff. So we threw a little around the gasket, around the O-ring for the what am I calling this thing? The thermostat, and it went on there. And there's our hose. So that's a nice, it's a good nice fit right there. Took a little bit of trimming, actually on both sides, and I actually ended up flipping it over and running it backwards, which is like an old fabrications thing. You know, if you're ever like cutting pipes and you're trying to run pipes for a fabrication job, like headers or downpipe or whatever, and you're like, man, it's like so close, but it just seems to be off a little bit. Try flipping it upside down. I bet it fits. And oh, I was tightening these bolts down, right, y'all? You ever get that feeling like when you're tightening a bolt, you're like, ooh, ooh. If I tighten that thing about 1.3 degrees more, there'll be no more threads left. And that was definitely the feel that I got out of that thing. So it, with the sealant on it, it should be good. If I start it up and it doesn't leak, then I'll be happy. And if it does, then, you know, replace the pump or throw in some fucking taps and helicoils or all that bullshit. So let's get it down and take a look at the top. So I've been wondering how I was going to go about tackling the wiring for this guy, and it's given me many sleepless nights to say the least. What I should have done is I should have, when the engine was out, had gone through the wires and tried to figure out what I needed, what I didn't need, and, you know, pull them right through the wall, through the loom, be out the fuse, you know, pull them out of the fuse block, and then have them labeled, you know, for when the engine went in, that, you know, these are the ones you have to wire up. But I wasn't that forward thinking. I was thinking forward enough to at least label the shit as I pulled it off. So the alternator wires and the starter. wires. So this is the hot to the starter, and then this is the wire, the ignition to the coil on the starter. So I did label the shit as I could figure it out, so that's a good thing. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna try to pull everything out of the firewall, not necessarily, you know, pull it out of the firewall, but I want to lay it out so I can just kind of take a look and see what I got to deal with. And that will, I think once I see it and kind of look at the wires and kind of, since I understand the old carbureted engines and what things used to do, I think that might A, make me feel better, and B, help me wrap my head around what I need to do to get this thing powered up. Boom. So there's the wires kind of all splayed out all over the damn place. I pretty much get everything. Like, I'm not really sure why the same wire that's going to the choke is plumbed into the same loom as the come on Mike, fucking speak. The AC, the HVAC basically harness, but maybe their thought was like, if you turn on the heater, then maybe you need your choke to work. I'm not sure, but it comes out of the same harness for sure. And it's over here. And then I got two from the alternator, two hots, right? Which is a bit. So this was like plugged into the alternator, and there was another wire here, which was the alternator light, basically, and I pulled it across the other side. So I get that, but I don't know why they would have both the wires running to one single hot. So there's like a 10 gauge that shoots across the car here. There's actually like two 10 gauges. One is your momentary for the key, and that's going to go to your starter solenoid. And then they have 1, 2, 3, 4 of these guys going to one hot, just kind of fucking crimped on here. And I don't know why you would send two hots to the alternator, but whatevs. So I know that we need to obviously power back, and I mean this powers everything. So this powers the loom for the heater stuff through here. It's gonna, you know, the power to the starter and the alternator, and it is going to be driving that into the dash and powering everything. So that's fine. I get all that. The other pieces over here. So I have this one loom down here. Where'd it go? Here it is. It used to be part of the fucking cruise control. And it's got this hose, and what it was, this hose, I guess this provided a vacuum. Maybe this like canister that it churned into provided some sort of vacuum, and when you hit the brakes it released the vacuum. But underneath the firewall is a goddamn catastrophe. I mean, it is just wires everywhere. So so what I'm gonna do is, and this is the choke, or the distributor. So this is going to be the hot distributor. So this is the key on wire, basically the hot on for the engine bay if I need that. I'm not really sure what I do need or don't need right now, but I know I need to plumb in some grounds and some positives over here, and loop these wires into it so I can get the starter hooked up. That being said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I've stared at it for hours now, and I've worked it out in my mind what I need to do. It's actually really easy. It's I'm going to make it more complicated than it needs to be, just because I can't let things go, and I'm going to over-engineer some of the wiring as far as like how I'm running stuff and whatnot. But you don't have to. I mean, at this point, it could really just be like a simple clip a couple lines, butt connect some shit, smash in some battery cables, and you'd be good. So I'm going to show you what I've done. So I have made a Milwaukee engine battery tester. believe me? So what I did is my buddy, a long time ago, Mr. Dave Campbell, he gave me this test light, and it's pretty cool. So I used it. It's really the first time I ever used it was yesterday, sorting out these wires. But I saw that they got these at Harbor Freight for, I want to say, under 20 bucks maybe. But the cool thing about this is, so you plug it into a, hot and a ground, and then you can check things. It'll tell you if it's grounded, if it's a ground. By turning, the LED will turn green, or if you touch something that's hot, it'll turn red, and that way you know it's hot. And if it doesn't do anything, you're touching something that's not going to ground at all, it's just not going to light up, and then you know that that's just a dead part, which is kind of handy. What I don't like about this is that you have to have it hooked up to a ground and a positive. This thing kind of confuses me, but once I post up this video, some kind soul will explain why it's doing that, and we'll see. So anyway, what I did was I wanted to check all these wires. I mean, I kind of know. I mean, this is simple, right? Like, it's got all these red wires going back here. You can see this. To this like octopus. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 leads coming off, and they're all 10 gauge, which I don't really think is the best thing in the world, but it ran for 40 years like that, so I don't know I'm gonna really mess with that too much. But then I had like this wires. Is this actually key on when I go to the key, to the start position? Because this is down for the starter. It should, but it's nice to verify that stuff before you go through the trouble of doing it all. And then I had all this mess of wires over here, which went to the distributor, the oil pressure, the alternator. I had like multiple alternator wires, so I wanted to verify what I basically need, and the engine is relatively simple. So these guys will go to the starter, because this is the key on, and then this is just the hot from the main hot loop. I'll run a cable to the starter, some 4 gauge, so I'll have plenty of amps to kick the engine on in the starters, down there. And then I'll have one of these wires that are supposed to go, this one will go to the alternator. We'll come over here to the alternator. And then I need, I believe, 1 wire that's key on for the alternator. There's a connector back here, and you're supposed to wire in a resistor that I have. So I want to say that I can just use one of these wires over here, and then everything I don't need I can just terminate, right? So what I did is I just got the old M12 Milwaukee, because it's 12 volts, right? And 12 volts is 12 volts is 12 volts. So I just put that right here on the battery tray, and I grounded it out down here, and I kind of did like a little multiple lead on it, and I figured out what side is positive and what side's negative. And then over here I did the same with with another wire, and I just hooked it right to that octopus. And if you shove it into here, I can hear my door buzzer going on, so I know that we got power going on to the inside. But I'm going to shut that because I don't want to listen to the door buzz. Another weird thing that's going on is my tail lights have suddenly decided to come on, which I don't know why. I don't know why. I checked the wire for it several times, and it seems like the brake light should be the sensor in there should be working. So I don't know. See, I'm even doing it right now. I'm procrastinating getting this damn thing done. So here is my Milwaukee battery, and here is the test light, and I do have this guy. It is ground, so if I clamp this guy onto here and give it a little twisty twist just to make sure it's got a good contact. Now this guy, oh yeah, I'll turn it upside down. Hopefully it won't ground out on anything. And there. So test it. And there. Okay, so if I touch one of these leads, then I can test. And you see I got a red light there. But these guys are kind of odd because when they weren't powered on, like right now, they're going to be green lights. And this is what I really don't get about this test light. I guess it just means that it's switched to ground. So I'm going to switch it on. You hear that lovely AM FM, or the AM radio. And now I got hot, so I'm red on the distributor wire, which makes sense. If you know anything about little carburetors and distributors, I am still not seeing anything out of the, what is this, oil pressure? But I think that's, I'm just going to use the alternator light since it does have power on when the dash is installed and run it to the alternator. So that's all there is to checking a 12-volt system if you want to use one of these Milwaukee M12 batteries and one of those Harbor Freight test lights. It's a quick way to verify what's got power and what doesn't have power, and then you kind of have an idea of what you got going on. Alright, so if you stuck it out this long, I appreciate it. I know it was a pretty boring video, and you know, I was tempted just to leave it all out, to be quite honest. But I figure there's probably somebody like me out there that just absolutely hates wiring, and that's probably what's stopping, you know, could be stopping people from diving into an LS swap and one of these old chassis, or you know, how do you make it work together. So I figured I'd show this stuff. You know, don't really care if it doesn't garner a bunch of views or attention. It's not really what I'm doing this for. Hopefully somebody can watch and get something away from it. You know, here's how to hook up the loom and check your leads, etc. Next video I'll put together some a little bit of fabrication stuff and some wiring stuff, and kind of tie the chassis and the engine computer together so we actually have a functioning vehicle. And I am probably a few weeks out, so pretty excited with the way the car's coming. I'm pretty happy as of late. You know, it's constantly you know, 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but that's just how projects are. So anyway, thanks for stopping by, checking out the video. Mike from MugFab out.